Have you ever watched yourself die? No, let me be more specific. Have you ever looked down from above and watched your own body dying? The man in today's story experienced exactly that. April 17th, 2019, 7:17 p.m. At a crosswalk in Sacramento, California, 48-year-old James Hartley was struck by an 18-wheeler while crossing the street. According to witnesses, he was thrown nearly 50 feet. Emergency responders found him in cardiac arrest at the scene. But here's what James says happened. I was definitely unconscious, but at the same time, I was awake. I was watching myself lying there from above. Today, we're going to follow his journey through those 3 minutes between death and life. Was this just a hallucination? Or was it something we don't yet understand about consciousness itself? Right now, one man's story of what happens after death begins.
It was an ordinary spring day. James Hartley had stopped by the grocery store on his way home from work. He was thinking about dinner, about his wife waiting at home, about the Warriors game that night. The light turned green. He stepped into the crosswalk with a handful of other pedestrians. And then, wham! A massive impact came from his left side. James remembers it like this. At first, I didn't know what happened. The world just spun. Then sound started fading away. My ears went dull, and everything turned white. According to witness statements, the truck driver had run a red light. He was looking at his phone. Never hit the brakes. James lay crumpled on the asphalt. Blood pooled around his head. He wasn't breathing. People screamed. Someone called 911. And right at that moment, something strange began to happen to James Hartley. Suddenly, the noise disappeared. There was no pain, and I just lifted out of my body. He felt himself floating, about 15 feet in the air, like a drone camera hovering over the scene. He looked down at himself lying on the street. I was confused at first. Is that me? I thought. My body was covered in blood, and people were crowded around. Some were crying. Some were on their phones. He remembers it vividly. A woman in a red jacket was doing chest compressions on him. CPR. Sweat dripped down her face as she bit her lip, desperately pushing down on his chest, over and over. And James watched it all, like watching a movie. The weird thing was, I wasn't scared. I felt peaceful. I thought, oh, I'm dead. But I wasn't sad about it. The ambulance arrived. Paramedics transferred him to a stretcher. They checked his vitals, put an oxygen mask on his face. James watched all of it from above, and then he followed the ambulance. My body went into the ambulance, but I was flying above it. Like I was magnetically pulled along. They reached the ER. Doctors rushed in. The heart monitor showed a flat line. Cardiac arrest. I heard one doctor yell, "Get the defibrillator." I heard it clear as day. Electric shocks. Once, twice. James's body convulsed, but his heart still wasn't beating. And in that exact moment, James Hartley was no longer in the emergency room. Let's pause the story here and look at this scientifically. What James experienced is called a near-death experience, or NDE. Worldwide, approximately 10 to 20% of people who survive cardiac arrest report similar experiences. So what is this, really? Neuroscientists explain it like this. During cardiac arrest, the brain is deprived of oxygen. When this happens, the temporal and parietal lobes can become abnormally activated, creating out-of-body experiences, hallucinations where you feel like you've left your body. Additionally, when the brain senses imminent death, it floods the system with neurochemicals like endorphins and DMT. This can cause feelings of peace, euphoria, and visual hallucinations like seeing lights or tunnels. In other words, scientifically speaking, it's the dying brain's last fireworks. But here's where it gets complicated. James remembered specific details from when he was clinically unconscious. Things he saw. The color of the woman's jacket who performed CPR red. The ambulance license plate number ending in 7842. Conversations the medical team had in the ER. All of these details were later verified as true. How could a brain with no activity see these things? In 2001, Dutch cardiologist Dr. Pim van Lommel conducted a study of 344 cardiac arrest patients. His findings showed that some patients reported consciousness even when their brain waves were flat. He said this: consciousness may not simply be a product of the brain. Just like a TV can be off but the broadcast signal still exists, consciousness may exist independently of the brain. This remains a controversial topic, of course. But one thing is clear. James Hartley, and thousands like him, experienced something that science can't fully explain. And their lives were completely changed afterward. Now, let's return to the story. From above the Earth ceiling, James began moving toward something else. James suddenly realized he was in darkness. But it wasn't frightening darkness. It was warm, like being in a womb. Quiet, safe. Then, in the distance, he saw a light. At first, just a small point. But it grew larger and larger, and James felt pulled toward it. I wasn't moving myself. The light was calling me. The closer he got, the more he felt something indescribable. Love, forgiveness, peace. He'd never felt anything like it in his entire life. All my fear disappeared. No regrets about the past. No anxiety about the future. Only, now, existed. And in the light, he met someone. He couldn't see a face. But the presence felt familiar. I can't explain who it was. But it felt like someone I'd been waiting for my whole life. Like a mother, like a friend, like God. The being communicated with him. Not in words, but directly into his mind. It's not your time yet. James asked, not in words, but in thought. Why not? It's so beautiful here. The being replied, you still have work to do. You need to go back. James resisted. I don't want to go back. I want to stay here. Then the being showed him something. His entire life unfolded like a panorama. Childhood, school, marriage, his children being born. But it wasn't just memories. I felt every action I'd taken. From the other person's perspective. The day he yelled at his parents, he felt his mother's sadness. The day he helped a friend, he experienced that friend's gratitude. The moments he'd been cold to his wife, he felt her loneliness. That's when I understood how precious my life was, how much I'd affected other people. Tears flowed. Regret, yes, but also gratitude. And the being spoke again. Now go back, and fill the rest of your time with love. James nodded, and in an instant, the light began to fade. 5 years have passed since then. How is James Hartley living now? He's not the same man he was before. Before the accident, he was an ordinary middle manager. Overworked, never enough time for family. Always worried about money and the future. But now, everything's different. Every morning when I wake up, I'm grateful. That I can breathe. That I can see my family. That I can feel the sun. He took early retirement. Instead, he started volunteering. He comforts patients in hospitals and talks with others who've had near-death experiences. I know death isn't the end, so I'm not afraid anymore. His family changed too. His wife says, my husband is completely different. More affectionate. He listens more. He used to be so quiet, but now he says, I love you, every day. His son says, after Dad's accident, I started seeing life differently. I learned that relationships matter more than success. James doesn't think his experience is special. Anyone can have a similar experience. You don't have to nearly die. What matters is realizing how precious life is. He adds, people fear death, but what I saw wasn't fear, it was love. We're not alone. We're part of something bigger. James Hartley's story ends here. But his message continues. We all die someday. That's unavoidable. But before then, we must live. Truly, fully, lovingly. James looked beyond death and came back. And the message he brought is simple. Live this moment, now. Tell the people you love. Forgive. Be grateful. Death wasn't an ending. It was a second chance. And for all of us, right now is that chance.
Thank you for watching. If this story meant something to you, please like and subscribe. And share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe in life after death? See you in the next video.